And welcome to a special edition of Michigan Matters. We travel to the Motor City for the opening of GM's new world headquarters as the Detroit Free Press's Breakfast Club Forum was about to begin with Roger Penske and GM President Mark Reuss.
From CBS Detroit, this is Michigan Matters with Carol Kane. Michigan Matters is brought to you in part by Cure Auto Insurance.
With GM moving into its new headquarters, which is inside the new Huss's building, and this being the first event kicking off a busy Detroit Auto Show week, it was a see and be seen crowd. Roger, let me start with you on this, because your history with GM goes back, way back. You were a race car driver early on. You became a Chevy dealer. You have partnered Motorsports through Team Penske, Grand Prix, and the IndyCar Series. So, talk about the history of you and GM and Chevy and how it's evolved.
Well, first, Carol, let me welcome everyone here today and thank you for letting me be part of this great occasion. And Mark, to you and Mary Bear and the whole board of directors to make the commitment, here in our city to stay here. It was a watershed decision. People don't realize that. Really, the anchor. This really, when you think about it, is the automotive capital of the world, and there's no question that your presence here at GM and what they've done in the investment here is amazing. But in 1957, I went to the Chevrolet dealer in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, had a competition Corvette. I bought it on a GMAC payment book, just to let you know how we got started. So you think about that. So I was really in the game at that point. But, Carol, I started out, obviously driving myself and had an opportunity to race a car in Daytona, our team did, and as we progressed. And then really in 1965, I became a Chevrolet dealer in West Philadelphia. Mark, that was the time you could buy an Impala with white walls for $2,800, just to put it in perspective. We obviously teamed up with GM and had the Trans Am Series, which we won, and then moved on. And I had the opportunity during this time, really in the 70s, to meet Mark's dad, Lloyd Reuss, when he was chief engineer at Chevy, and he was very interested in motorsports and performance. And we teamed up really in '86 and decided that we were going to do an Indy engine. Through that 2-year period, '86 to '88, we then went to Indianapolis and we won the first 500 for over 60-some years for Chevrolet. And think about it, since that time, we've had 20 wins and 10 of them have been with General Motors. And Mark, doing a little homework before today, we've had 165 wins with Chevrolet product and General Motors product. So this really helped us launch ourselves and the partnership. Dealing with Mark and the entire company, this has been game-changing for our company today, and I can't thank you enough.
Talk about Roger's impact and his organizations here on Detroit and this region.
I literally have known Roger my whole life, which that's a privilege, number one. And number two, I can remember those days, my dad taking me to the Indy 500, and I met you for the first time, actually.
Right.
So in '86, I was graduated from college, but even before then, before we had those, we had the stock blocks for Buick and Chevrolet. Right. Remember those? And boy, going to the Indy 500, I just really wanted to be an engineer. I really wanted to be like Roger, and be like the company, because the execution was always so high. And frankly, I was in awe every time my dad took me to one of those races, and his wife, Kathy, sort of always took care of me because there was a lot of business going on, so I was sort of hanging around. And I looked older than I was, so I could sneak into the pits, but she always took care of me. So a lot of fond memories there, but also a lot of winning memories. And later, as we became business partners over a long period of time, Roger and I, post-financial crisis, sat down and said, I'd really like to have a Chevrolet engine back in IndyCar. And Ilmore's still there, the original partnership that goes back to that '86 time frame.
Right.
And what could we do to do that? And so we sat down with Bud and the whole Penske team and took a look at can we get another Detroit race here? And I said I'd love to be able to say that we have another co-developed engine and another race in Detroit, and we both really had that drive with IndyCar at the time before Penske's ownership of it to drive that home and get a race back. Yeah. And I have a lot of memories of that. The first race, Bud Denker was pouring like a dry mix onto the concrete on Belle Isle. Remember that, to make sure, because some of the rubber was coming up on the track. So that's the kind of commitment, though, that the Penske Corporation has. And I wasn't around in '67 with Mark Donohue and the whole Trans Am piece, but I sure have a lot of memories of the cars, the drivers, and the company has always been, a standard of excellence.
We're just warming up. Keep it here as the conversation continues with Roger Penske and Mark Reuss after this. Welcome back to Michigan Matters and our conversation with Roger Penske and Mark Reuss. We talked about our largest industry, autos. We both know that the president is scheduled to be in Detroit today. You both have talked to the president and have every so often. I don't know how recently, but with all of the evolving policies coming out of Washington, quickly changing no less, have you talked with him? I mean, do you think he understands that complexities of the auto industry and the auto business and how difficult it is?
I've got to say the administration doesn't come from the auto industry, but as this was being rolled out and put in place, it's been a really open door for some of the puts and takes on what happens, because we make engines in Flint, a lot of engines in Flint that go into trucks that are made in Mexico that come into Mexico, and that's just one example of that. So the supply chains are very complex; they're global, and so you have to get into that detail to be able to know that. And bringing production back to the United States is something that everybody would love to see, because it's jobs and it's growth and it's all of that. So we're doing that. And so I would say it's been a really open conversation and constructive pretty much from day one. And, we've worked with, I don't know how many administrations over what period of time, but we work with every administration. And so, this isn't one administration versus, that's not what's going on. It's how can we do this? How can we get, real support and real fundamental growth in the industrial manufacturing base of the auto industry here. And so that's been the conversation. Yeah.
I think it's business friendly. Yeah. I would say, and there's no question as we look at this commitment, and I hear 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 10 trillion, some of those numbers, obviously are telephone numbers, but if we can get those commitments to happen, and we look, the byproduct of that's going to be not in the next 6 or 12 months. It's going to be 24 to 36 months. And if we can build these plants and the suppliers come back, it's going to be a real benefit to the middle class. Mark, I know you and Murray were very key as we talked to pull the waivers in California, because I think there were 13 states that had different regulations, for emissions. Well, now, under the current administration and the current legislation that's taken place, all of our states will have the same, which is key from the standpoint of certainly emission standards, which that's a benefit. Wouldn't you say you got a benefit out of that?
It was billions of dollars worldwide as well, trying to get, internal combustion engine powertrain regulatory consistency, and so it's a big deal.
Let's talk a little bit about this building, and Mark, this building which is so historic, and GM making the imprint, looking to Michigan's history in terms of architecture, art, and it just touches all throughout this building.
Well, if you go back in history and you look at GM really brought aesthetic design to the industry. People sometimes don't know that, but we did. And so the Harley Earl piece of that, and then the Saarinen influence of the mid-century modern is something that's very important to us, because we still believe that design drives the passionate buying experience, putting the customer at the center of all that. And that was based on a lot of research and a lot of history that came about. In fact, I think there's the 38 Aero Coupe sitting out here, but also, sort of the Cadillac Celestiq is sort of our current design thinking for Cadillac. That's in this building. So it goes right down to the sections of the wood walls are similar to the Tech Center in design and other places there. All those things are really carefully curated. Even the floor that you're sitting on here is really brought from that mid-century modern that we have in a lot of our different facilities. And the Bertoia, of course, that's hanging, there's a lot of rich heritage to the Bertoia wall that is at Cadillac House in the center of the Tech Center, and then in Flint. And so a lot of really cool stories. I could go on and on. I know you said we don't have a lot of time on that, but just take a moment and take a look at some of those things. We redid the goddess. The goddess is sitting out there. That hasn't been seen in a long, long time, so our sculptors and Warren did that, so great stuff.
Well, you're moving from the Renaissance Center, which GM still owns as of today, here. What happens to the Renaissance Center? What would you like to see happen, and what will GM's role be?
Well, we put $1 billion in that riverfront, so, big commitments, and we sort of redid the inside of that ring. It's a very difficult building to visit and work in. I worked in there for a while. But it's a bit confusing, so we did that. We put the money in it, and we don't want to see all that go away necessarily. And I think Dan Gilbert and his team did a nice job of putting renderings together that show the possibilities of office, of residential, of commercial, all coexisting there and creating and reimagining the whole waterfront. So, it's not derelict. We don't want to see any of that. We want to see that part of the skyline still, and I think we can do that.
Would you ever consider selling it?
We're open to anything, but, we put $250 million commitment-wise into that to make sure that the right things happen there, and we're hopeful.
Coming up, the focus shifts to motorsports and Detroit. Keep it right here. Besides having a love of Detroit, a love of motorsports, which is huge to both of you. And Mark, you're both professional race car drivers. You did something that few people in this room, I'm going to guess, have probably done, and that's drive a Corvette ZR1 at 233 miles per hour, which you have to tell me where this was. It wasn't on the lodge, no doubt. Your tires would have been
No, but this morning was very competitive, but it was not on the lodge.
So what was that like?
Everything happens really fast. I mean, really fast. And so it's hard to describe. You're pulling some serious G's. It's done on a long oval. And so they average the speeds going north and south on it. And the thing I was not prepared with, Ken Morris and I were doing this, and the G-force. And so the G-force going into that at over 200 miles an hour and coming out of it is something you don't see on a simulator, and frankly, I don't know how you teach that, but it was thrilling.
You hold your breath, did you?
Yeah, I didn't. No, I didn't close my eyes. No, I didn't. Forcing the blood, trying to force the blood into my head. But speaking of motorsports, a couple of things here. We're deeply, deeply committed to motorsports, and we have been, along the way. So we race in the GTP, IMSA and WEC. We race Corvettes, globally. It's a big deal. And then IndyCar, of course. 134 wins across all of our national series last year. 11 driver championships, 5 manufacturers championships, and 3 championships, thanks to people like what's going on right here. So, yeah, we are deeply committed.
Speaking of racing in Detroit, both of you are involved with the Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix presented by Lear. I think I got all that name in correctly there. Get all those sponsors in there. With whatever's going to happen with the Renaissance Center, the track is for the Grand Prix, I'm going to assume, might be affected. I don't know if anything would be going on this year. Any conversation about that yet?
Well, I mean, we don't have the final plans on the RenCen. What happens there?
Presumably.
Yeah, there'll be something happening there, but I can tell you, Bud and Roger and the whole team have done a wonderful job bringing it off of Belle Isle into the streets with what we have. And I think there's a lot of variation that can happen there and a lot of creativity and flexibility. So I think that partnership is key. Like you say, the partnerships are everything, because we'll work together with how that becomes a new riverfront to bring a great track.
And I think the byproduct of this partnership is $10 million that from the Grand Premier that we've given back to the community. Remember that. You know, the underlying foundation of having this race here is for the community and for Detroit. And you folks out here that help us there, it's a big, big help. And I would hope that we've got 2 or 3 years, and then we'll sit down, as Mark said, and determine what we can do, because, you know, it's free. Think about the economic benefit. It's almost $100 million when we run the race here. So everybody's getting a benefit here. And guess what? It's another staple we're putting into the city of Detroit. And I would say having GM there, and to think about the pit lane that Bud and the team did this past couple of years, and you sit there and you see the GM building there at the end of the pit lane. You go out there and look at it. It's massive. There's no place like it. And obviously, Mark, you've been a big supporter of ours, but I would say, Carol, we're going to continue to race in Detroit.
How do you think, in a nutshell, we're doing as a region/state at educating young folks?
We take students out of the Detroit public schools, educate them on things like checkbooks, bank accounts. I wish I would have had that back then. All of those things. So we get a good front view of that, and the opportunities to show kids what could be are still in front of us. And so while it's a lot better, the test scores aren't good. And so we have got to keep working on that, and it is an ecosystem problem. It is not because there's no money or there's not great teachers. That's not true. There are. I think that's what's really encouraging about what Mary Sheffield's doing. That concentration on the neighborhoods and the ecosystem is really key to break that cycle.
There's a lot more Michigan Matters to come. Roger, you have been a champion for the Motor City forever, and one of the reasons, major events, the NCAA, Final Four, 2027, the 2024 NFL Draft, much of that comes from things because of the philanthropic things that you did to help the city. From your bird's eye view of what has transpired in recent years, how do you think Detroit's reputation has changed, and how do you think we're viewed around the world now?
Well, I think I go back to really when you think about 2003, when I got a call, from Bill Ford Jr. about take over and be the chairman of the Super Bowl. And I think about the city at that point, Mark, when you think about it, what we had, and obviously it was a challenge, but it was amazing how the private sector, along obviously with the local political officials, we got together and started to build momentum. And when I think about, I said earlier today, I remember calling MDOT and saying we could clean up I-94 and I-75. We got people coming in from around the world. How do we look? I remember having 2 vans with painters in it. And we'd say, let's paint this building, and tear this one down. So this was the momentum, and it wasn't just me. I mean, I happened to have a responsibility, but it was the amalgamation of the people here in Detroit, and to see the success of the Super Bowl and what we've been able to accomplish since then. The automotive industry here stepped up, and we gave back to the city, and that's what I see today. We can see the buildings, and certainly General Motors, and I take my hat off to Gilbert and Illich and a lot of the people that have committed here, but it's really the human capital, the people here that have taken their hard work and their capital to help this city.
Mark, I want to ask you this, because the Gordie Howe Bridge is coming to life here, a matter of weeks, months, sometime in 2026. I know you were involved at one point with the Gordie Howe Bridge and helping to bring that to life here. There's a trade agreement between U.S., Canada, and Mexico right now, which is up for review. A lot of conversation be going on there. How important is Canada to GM?
It's very important. We have multiple facilities there, always have had, have a tech hub there. Around the Markham area. So, if you think about it, we've always said that we want to go to where people want to be for some of the places that bring different things to our company, whether it's technical ability or manufacturing. The manufacturing sites we have in Canada are some of our very best in terms of commitment, quality, and production. So it's very important to us. Oshawa in particular, our headquarters in Canada is very important. It's been a long-standing thing. And I think our Mexico operations the same way. We have been there for a long, long time, probably my whole career. And so that's a great place for us from a market share and selling. We make a lot of things and sell in Mexico, but we also have a global footprint of other markets that come out of Mexico. So very important to us.
I know that Bill Ford has also come out and endorsed him. And Mark, are you getting in the endorsement game?
I don't know if I should, but I'm going to tell you that the partnership we've had with Mayor Duggan and now Mary Sheffield is extraordinary. We put $2.2 billion into bringing Hamtramck back online, which has been a great thing for the city. But I'd also say that there's a lot of other things that we've worked on that may have not gotten all the media headlines that were, we put $150 million into the community here over the last 10 years. We're going to keep doing that. There's just billions of dollars in the state of Michigan, $17 billion that we put investment-wise back into the state, and those are big investments, and they aren't for, like Roger said, they're not for the next year. They're for the next 5 to 10 years, and it's because people like Mayor Duggan and now Mary Sheffield, who's going to concentrate. From what I've watched a lot of what she said is on the neighborhoods, safety, children, all the things that are important.
Sure.
And so taking the momentum from City Council into that is going to be a big deal. So I'm very optimistic and very positive on that, and I think we're lucky. Just in Michigan, 38 facilities, 210 dealers, 1,000 Tier 1 supplier locations, and a lot of money. So on a United States level, we're about $134 billion from an economic additive piece of that. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. We employ the most people in the United States of any OEM, and we make and sell we sell the most vehicles of any OEM. So it's a big contribution. State of Michigan, just by itself, 4%, $29 billion of contribution here. So these aren't trillions, but we feel like we're doing our part for the communities and our plant cities, and especially Michigan. But there's much more to do, and we'll continue on that path.
I look at it this way. There's so many things going on, and there's so many different avenues that have to be touched. And I would say the cabinet, they've got some good people. I'm concerned socially, personally, on what's going on in these cities. But just think about our city today. Homicides down 19%. Amazing. Think about that. And we've got a third of the population in the city of Detroit's under 24 years old. So things are happening when you've got the proper management. It's in our own companies that way, and it's certainly across this country. And I've got 15 grandchildren, so I'm concerned about what they are going to grow up into and where we're going to be. Can they go to college, and what are the things that they're going to take place? And we have to think about that and not react. I think Mike Duggan has been on the front of that for the last 12 years, and hopefully Mary Sheffield will take that. She's kept the police commissioner here, which is critical, and I've talked to Mike a lot, and hopefully that he's going to be successful in his strive to be the governor. He certainly has the credentials.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Mark Rice and Roger Penske. Our special thanks to the Detroit Free Press, as well as Red Rock and Penske Corporation. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you next Sunday for a little bit more Michigan Matters.